Hi, good morning to all of you. So let us start once again. So we'll be starting with international relations. In fact, we started with international relations yesterday only, and in international relations, we began to discuss about major objectives and principles of India's foreign policy, whereby we had discussed that India's foreign policy is based on certain aims and objectives, which are based on realistic considerations, and it has also been based on certain important principles that impart idealism to India's foreign policy, and therefore scholars are of opinion that India's foreign policy is a blend of both realism and idealism. So we had discussed the important objectives like like territorial integrity and sovereignty, economic development, clear, at global peace and security, and principles like Panchshil, non-alignment, anti-apartheid, and even nuclear disarmament. Clear. So we discuss about the objectives and principles of India's foreign policy, and with this background, now we'll discuss about the India's relationship with major powers. Major powers, first of all, being United States. Clear. We'll be discussing important countries like United States, Russia, Israel, Iran, and important countries like United Kingdom, France. These are very prominent countries. Clear. And we'll be discussing India's interaction with all those countries. Before we start, I'll let you know there are almost 200 countries in this universe. All the countries may not be very important for India's bilateral affairs because India's policies gets affected and influenced by some major countries. So obviously those countries becomes very important. Clear. And in this context, we'll be discussing about those major powers which has direct or indirect consequences on India, and we'll discuss India's interaction with those countries, and one among them, the most prominent in fact, is United States. So we'll discuss Indo-US relationship. Now how we are going to proceed this, what will be the approach, we'll just understand about the approach. Clear. First of all, there's a question. Sir, in 1971, India signed friendship treaty with Soviet Union, right? Clear. So can we say that India during the time India diluted the policy of non-alignment? Clear. See, again, I'll let you know that Nehru is remembered as an architect of India's foreign policy, and Nehru's foreign policy was more inclined towards idealism. Idealism means non-alignment, Panchshil, anti-apartheid. Clear. So it was more directed towards the idealism. Clear. So Nehru was a clear-cut idealist who wanted ideal foreign policy. Clear. But in course of time, some prime ministers realized that idealism alone has not worked for India, and we need to be more practical and realistic in nature. That is why in 1971, Indira Gandhi, clear, she concluded a comprehensive treaty with Soviet Union, which is known as Indo-Soviet Treaty for peace, friendship, and cooperation. Clear. And in this way, India established formal bilateral relationship with Soviet Union. Now, what was the necessity? Necessity was that at this time, Indira Gandhi was totally against Pakistan, and in fact, Indo-Pak war took place. And in this Indo-Pak war, United States sided with Pakistan. In fact, the biggest scar in Indo-US relationship is that USA decided even to take nuclear action against India. Clear. So obviously, it affected India's sentiments. Indira Gandhi realized that time has come to be more realistic in nature and therefore take the support of another superpower, that is Soviet Union. That is why in 1971 she concluded Indo-Soviet Treaty for peace, friendship, and cooperation. But at the same time, no doubt, clear, foreign policy began to move from idealism to realism, and there was certain amount of dilution in the principle of non-alignment. Clear. But since non-alignment is not about neutrality, clear, it is about principal distance. We had made it clear yesterday. So obviously guided by principal distance, Indira Gandhi established relationship with Soviet Union. So it did not completely dilute non-alignment because non-alignment itself prescribes principal distance from the power blocks. So by maintaining principal distance, Indira Gandhi decided to have relationship with Soviet Union. So non-alignment never prohibited any bilateral relationship. Clear. But Nehru was more ideal and he maintained complete distance from the two power blocks. Indira Gandhi was more realistic and she came forward to establish relationship with Soviet Union without affecting the sanctity of non-alignment, because non-alignment itself prescribes principal distance from the power blocks. It's clear. Next question is clear. Policy non-alignment. Good morning, good morning, good morning to all of you. Clear. Next question is, sir, Indian foreign policy was drafted in 1946 before independence. Then why not Marg Purb Pakistan or Bangladesh in 1971, even it is a part of India before independence. Why not merge Purbi Pakistan? Okay, why not merge Eastern Pakistan or Bangladesh in 1971, even it is a part of India before independence? Clear? No, this is important question asked by Vishwajit. Clear? Next question by Vishwajit is China violate India for Indian foreign policy principle. Then why India can continue trying relation with China? We'll come to that also. Clear? So first of all, the first question of Vishwajit. Sir, Indian foreign policy was drafted in 1946 before independence, right? Then why not merge Purb Pakistan or Bangladesh in 1971 when it is a part of India before independence? Clear? Now, it needs to be explained. First of all, clear? We need to understand this thing. There's no doubt that Bangladesh or Eastern Pakistan, Purbi Pakistan, clear? It was also a part of India before independence in unified India, undivided India. After India's independence, Pakistan got divided into East Pakistan and West Pakistan, established in two parts, clear? And in 1971, when Pakistan was defeated, East Pakistan was liberated into a new country, that is Bangladesh, in 1971. The question is, why not India integrate Bangladesh into its own territory? Clear? Just understand, we had discussed yesterday also that after India's independence till the end of 20th century, India was not trusted by its neighboring countries. Clear? Because there was a colonial mindset that dominated the neighboring countries. And what was that mindset? All the countries had emerged from colonial rule of almost 2 centuries. Since most of them had emerged from colonial rule of 200 years, 2 centuries. Clear? Obviously, they were scared of colonialism again, and they realized India is the largest country in South Asia, area-wise and population-wise, and economically also it was better off. Clear? So India may flex its arms anytime, and these smaller countries can again be colonized. Clear? Therefore, this kind of trust deficit was always there, or natural distrust was there. Clear? India also realized this distrust, and India wanted to get rid of this trust so that India can maintain healthy relationship with the neighboring countries. Clear? And that is why when Bangladesh was liberated in 1971, India wanted to reinforce that India does not have any malafide intention with neighboring countries. Rather, India wants to respect the territorial integrity of neighboring countries. And that is why even though East Pakistan was liberated by India, East Pakistan was not annexed into Indian territory, just to respect the sentiments of the people in East Pakistan. And therefore, Bangladesh was created and healthy relationship was established between the leader of Bangladesh, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and Indira Gandhi. Clear? So India wanted to make it clear from the very beginning, India does not have any wrong intention towards neighboring countries. India respects the territorial integrity. India wants to support the neighboring countries so that the whole South Asia as a bloc can develop collectively. That is why India did not integrate Bangladesh. And moreover, to eliminate the trust deficit we had discussed, Indra Kumar Gujral gave his doctrine known as Gujal's doctrine to provide non-reciprocal support to all the neighboring countries without expecting anything in return. So all these moves has been taken to project that India is a big brother in South Asia and India really cares for the development and security of neighboring countries. Is this clear, Vishwajit? It's very important to understand. Clear? Next is, China violate Indian foreign policy principle, then why India continue trade relationship with China? See, again, I'll let you know, clear, that there are some very important disputes between India and China, no doubt. Clear? In fact, the most important dispute is related to the boundary between India and China, which is known as McMahon Line. Clear? But China does not respect the McMahon Line because China claims that this line was drawn way back in 1914 during First World War, and at that time China was not a nation. So China considered McMahon Line to be arbitrary and at the same time imperial line. Clear? So China does not respect the sanctity of McMahon Line, and therefore China always enters beyond the McMahon Line to take Indian territories. This is the most important dispute between India and China. But at the same time, China being a very powerful country in Asian continent, India cannot afford to offend China off and on, and therefore in this globalized era, it is very important to have healthy trade relationship at least with neighboring countries. Clear? Both India and China are basically required for each other, and therefore both realizes the importance of trade, and that is why both India and China has healthy bilateral trade relationship. In fact, China is one of the largest trading partner of India. India. Because if this trade is not done, it will further affect the economic position of India, clear, especially the manufacturing industry. And therefore, all the major disputes are to be resolved through constructive dialogue and peaceful negotiation rather than confrontation. In fact, one of the major approach of India's foreign policy is to deal with all the countries through constructive dialogue and peaceful negotiation, not through confrontation. So India also wants to improve ties with China, there's no doubt, and therefore trade component is always emphasized by both the countries, even though both are competitive countries in global politics. So obviously China does not violate India's foreign policy, but China does not respect the McMahon line that is there between India and China, which is always a point of contention. But at the same time, both countries realizes the importance of bilateral trade, and therefore trade relationship continues to remain as a positive aspect of Sino-Indian relationship. Is that clear, Bishwajit? Please revert back. These questions are important. Clear? Coming to another question by Madhurima. Sir, can you please tell us about IEA and its relationship with India? Obviously, we'll come to IAEA also. But here, since you have asked this question, I'll let you know. She has asked question about IAEA, clear, and it is important for all of you in international relations, clear. IAEA stands for International Atomic Energy Agency, with its headquarters at Vienna. Vienna is the capital of Austria. The IAEA is known as a nuclear watchdog, clear. Nuclear watchdog meaning thereby it monitors the nuclear program of all major countries so that any country does not divert its nuclear program for nuclear weapon generation, clear, because the most important concern with nuclear energy is that nuclear energy program can anytime be diverted to produce nuclear weapons that can be a threat to global peace and security. So IAEA has been established at Vienna in Austria as a nuclear watchdog in order to monitor the nuclear cycle of every country so that nuclear policy is not diverted towards nuclear weapon generation, clear. In fact, here only I'll let you know what is the issue, clear. Whenever nuclear cycle is operated in any country, clear, apart from energy generation, a byproduct is generated in nuclear cycle. This byproduct is known as the spent fuel, clear. So spent fuel is basically a byproduct which is generated along with energy generation in nuclear cycle, and this spent fuel has the potential to be converted into nuclear weapon, clear. And therefore all major organizations like IAEA wants to have surveillance with whether spent fuel is being misused or not, clear. So in order to prevent the misuse of spent fuel and to prevent diversion of nuclear cycle towards weapon program, IAEA has been established as nuclear watchdog, clear. So IAEA is a nuclear watchdog. And why India is concerned? Because since India has not signed NPT, non-proliferation treaty, we had discussed yesterday only, India's nuclear installations are being monitored by IAEA, and therefore India has divided all its nuclear installations into two sections known as civilian nuclear plant and military nuclear plant, clear. All civilian nuclear plant are open for IAEA inspection. But since IAEA maintains complete monitoring, it also affects the autonomy of India over nuclear cycle, and that in turn affects energy generation program. So this has always been a point of thorn between India and IAEA, that is nuclear watchdog. Is that clear, Madhurima? Please revert back. All these are important questions, clear? Now, coming to the next one. Sir, explain briefly India's policy of nuclear doctrine. I'm unable to understand. Pritam, I'll explain India's nuclear doctrine. Just understand. Clear? Okay. See, we had discussed yesterday that India declared itself to be a nuclear weapon state in 1998, clear, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee conducted second nuclear test again at Pokhran, and it was declared to be Operation Shakti, clear. After this nuclear test only, Atal Bihari Vajpayee strongly advocated India's stature of nuclear weapon state. But since India became a nuclear weapon state, this status needed to be reconciled with principle of nuclear disarmament, clear. And in order to reconcile with the principle of disarmament, India came out with another document known as Nuclear Doctrine. Now, what is this Nuclear Doctrine? According to Nuclear Doctrine, it was made clear that India has acquired the weapon status just to create minimum credible deterrence on other neighboring countries that also became nuclear weapon state like Pakistan and China. So in order to create just a deterrence on those countries that they may not attack India on nuclear front, India made it clear that we have also developed nuclear weapons just to create deterrent, just to create a preventive measures against Pakistan and China. So under nuclear doctrine it was made clear it is only for minimum credible nuclear deterrence. Moreover, under nuclear doctrine India made it clear that India will follow the principle of no first use. Clear? So India will not take initiative of attacking any country on nuclear front. But it was made clear if India is attacked by nuclear weapon by other country, India will have second strike capability. India will strike back strongly. Clear? Just to create deterrent effect on other countries. So India made it clear that nuclear weapon status of India is not to intimidate other country, but to create deterrent effect on other country, that they must not take India lightly and they must consider India to be a possible potential nuclear weapon state. Clear? So it was basically for self-security, internal security, the defense of India, that India became a nuclear weapon state, and it is in perfect reconciliation with the principle of nuclear disarmament. Is that clear, Pritam? Please revert back. Fine. So all the questions, very important questions. In fact, all these dimensions will get unfolded in course of time when we discuss international relations like IAEA. We had discussed major regimes yesterday, major organized like NSG, NPT, CTBT, PTBT. All these are very important developments of international relations. Global politics. Clear? Now coming back to Indo-US relationship. Clear? But before we start Indo-US relationship, I'll let you know what would be the approach that will be followed by us throughout the process of this session. Clear? See, in international relations, when we discuss India's relationship with any country or organization, three major structure needs to be adhered to. Clear? And this structure you will have to adhere while writing answers also for mains examination related to international relations. Clear? What are these major structure? We'll understand. Clear? First of all, while discussing India's relationship with any country, we will discuss the historical background of this relationship. Clear? Because obviously you need to understand the historical background, that how this relationship was there in the past, then only we can understand what is the present development and how in this relationship can develop in future as well. Clear? So past developments, or rather historical background, is always very important to understand relationship in contemporary times. Clear? So first of all, we'll discuss about historical developments in that relationship, and that is known as retrospectively. Clear? So first of all, we'll discuss about retrospect of that relationship. Retrospect means that what was there in the past. Clear? How that relationship was shaped in the past, then only you can understand the contemporary development. Clear? So first of all, we'll discuss the relationship retrospectively. Clear? Then at the same time, clear, after this, we'll discuss the relationship from contemporary perspective. Then we'll discuss the relationship from contemporary perspective. Clear? And it will be a large section. Clear? So contemporary perspective will be a large section. Clear? So it will be a small section, it will be a large section. Clear? And because obviously you have to understand international relations from contemporary perspective. Clear? And at last, after contemporary perspective, then we'll discuss about the future of this relationship, and that is very important to anticipate how this relationship is going to develop in coming time. So we'll discuss about the prospect of this relationship. Clear? So we'll discuss the prospect of this relationship, that is future development of this relationship. So certain amount of anticipation is required in international relations. Clear? So first of all, we'll discuss about the relationship retrospectively, then from contemporary perspective, and then prospectively, that what would be the future of this relationship. Clear? This would be a small, this would not be a last section. This also will not be a last section because it will be a concluding thing, but this will be the last section, that is the contemporary issues. Clear? Because most of the questions will be based on contemporary issues. While writing answers also means examination, you have to take care the introduction to your answer will be always retrospective. The large body of the answer will be on contemporary issue, and in the conclusion you have to anticipate the future of that relationship, that is prospect of this relationship. So in international relation, structure should be very clear. Introduction should be starting with retrospect, then major body should mention contemporary developments asked in the question, and then conclusion should always be based on the prospect, the future anticipation of this relationship. This structure must be understood, because whenever we'll discuss India's relationship with any country, first of all we'll discuss that relationship retrospectively, then from contemporary perspective, and then we'll anticipate the future of that relationship or prospect of that relationship. This structure needs to be understood clearly. Clear? Now with this perspective only, now we'll discuss about Indo-US relationship. Clear? Indo-US relationship, and we'll discuss Indo-US relationship first of all retrospectively, then from contemporary perspective, and then we'll anticipate the future of this relationship. Clear? So coming to Indo-US relationship, first of all the historical background, the retrospective perspective. Is this clear? First of all, now just understand about Indo-US relationship retrospectively. Clear? Now retrospectively, that is in the past. Clear? And in the past will always mean the relationship that developed especially after India's independence. Even though we discuss relationship with some countries from ancient times also, because some countries India shares civilizational links. Clear? So whenever India shares civilizational links, we'll discuss that relationship from other perspective as well. Clear? So first of all we'll discuss Indo-US relationship retrospectively. Clear? So retrospectively. Clear? Now just understand first. Clear? See, India became an independent nation in 1947. Just before India's independence only, United States began to give due emphasis to India. Clear? Why United States began to give due emphasis to India? The reason is clear that in the course of Second World War only, US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt began to realize that two catastrophic wars has been fought at global level, primarily due to race war, imperialism and colonialism. Since he realized that imperialism, colonialism has been a major factor in South Asia, he realized the biggest colony of Britain was India, and if India gets liberated, the whole colonial architecture of Britain in South Asia will come to an end. So it was right anticipation by Franklin Roosevelt. So as soon as First World War started, United States began to support Britain, but at the same time United States President Franklin Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill signed a charter in 1941, the charter known as Atlantic Charter. Clear? Under the provisions of Atlantic Charter, Franklin Roosevelt demanded that all the countries of Asia and Africa have right to self-determination. This is a very big word, that is right to self-determination. So he was of opinion that all the countries which are there in Asia and Africa, which are colonies of European powers, especially Britain, these countries have genuine right to self-determination, which can be ensured through their independence. Clear? At the same time, since Franklin Roosevelt began to support Britain to resist German aggression, Winston Churchill accepted the demand of Roosevelt, and as per Atlantic Charter, it was made clear that after the end of Second World War, all the colonies of Britain would be liberated from British colonialism. This was Atlantic Charter. But when Second World War was about to come with Allied victory, clear, Winston Churchill gave a narrow interpretation to Atlantic Charter. A narrow interpretation was that Winston Churchill made it clear that Atlantic Charter applies to only those areas which were basically under Nazi control, Hitler's control, and has been acquired by Britain in Second World War. So it does not apply to all the colonies of Britain, but it does apply only to those areas areas which were under Nazi control acquired by Britain. Clear? And therefore, this resulted into differences between French Winston Churchill and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Clear? Meanwhile, India appreciated this gesture of Franklin Roosevelt, and India expressed its gratitude. Jawaharlal Nehru expressed his gratitude towards United States. That is why India became one of the founding members to sign United Nations Charter that led to the establishment of United Nations Organization in 1945. Clear? After the end of Second World War, under the pressure of United States and United Nations, India was granted independence in 1947, which was a big support of United States towards India. Clear? And India got the right to self-determination. But along with India's independence, India got divided into India and Pakistan as two separate countries. Clear? In 1948, Jawaharlal Nehru expressed his gratitude towards United States for supporting India's independence from British colonialism. Clear? But at the same time, after Second World War only, period of Cold War started, and in the era of Cold War, United States supported capitalist ideology and India advocated non-alignment formally. Clear? Nehru was one of the pioneers of non-aligned principle. Clear? Even though India formally supported the principle of non-alignment, but Nehru was a declared socialist. So obviously United States perceived that Nehru was more inclined towards Soviet Union just because of his support to socialist philosophy. And from here, perceived ideological differences began to take place, and to counter India in South Asia, unfortunately, United States began to support Pakistan. The biggest example of US support to Pakistan was that Pakistan was given membership in two regional organizations promoted by United States. One was Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, another was known as Central Treaty Organization. So Pakistan was given membership in two regional organizations of SEATO and CENTO, that is Southeast Asian Treaty Organization and Central Treaty Organization, originally known as Baghdad Pact. Clear? And this affected the sentiment of India as Pakistan began to be given support by United States just to counter India, as there was perceived ideological differences that began to take place between India and United States. That is why we say Nehru's foreign policy was guided by more idealism rather than by realistic considerations. This is clear first of all. So first of all, we need to understand the historical background, what happened. Then we'll come to contemporary developments, especially by the end of 20th century. It's clear? No, there's a question. India is member of many international organizations like ASEAN, Quad, etc. Then in which process India stand with NAM and promote? Then in which condition India stand with NAM and promote NAM? Clear? Second, I'll let you know. Clear? India has advocated NAM just because non-aligned movement was established in the era of Cold War. But after the end of Cold War, NAM has adopted several other measures like humanitarian relief, issues like climate change, human trafficking, drug trafficking. So all these are still very relevant issues at global level. So India support NAM not because of two power blocks. The bloc politics has come to an end. No, India supports NAM with respect to humanitarian relief, disaster management, at the same time major relief even in times of COVID crisis. All these issues are being taken by NAM countries as of now. That is why in this process India stands with NAM even in contemporary times, even though the present government is not very serious to promote NAM at present time. Clear? So being member of ASEAN, Quad and other organization does not compromise with principle of NAM, because NAM does not reflect the era of Cold War. Rather, NAM has adopted other themes like humanitarian relief in contemporary times. Krishna. Is that clear, Krishna? Clear. Now coming to SEATO, right? Historical. Okay. Right. Indo-US relationship and right subheading retrospect. Always follow this strategy. Clear? Right subheading as retrospect. Retrospect. That is the past. Retrospect. Right introduction first. Clear? Retrospect. Right. That Indo-US relationship can be traced back. Indo-US relationship can be traced back to the Second World War, can be traced back to the Second World War, when US President Franklin US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt realized that the primary reason behind the two world wars is the race for imperialism and colonialism. Imperialism and colonialism. Clear? Right. Consequently, Roosevelt began to convince the most powerful colonial country Britain to provide independence and, very important term, to provide independence and the right to self-determination. Independence and the right to self-determination. To countries of Asia and Africa. Clear? Africa. Right. This resulted into Atlantic Charter. Charter between Roosevelt and the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Atlantic Charter and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill in 1941. 1941. Clear? Right. According to the Atlantic Charter, 1941. According to the Atlantic Charter, Britain decided to liberate all colonies. In Asia and Africa. Asia and Africa. Colonies in Asia and Africa. Clear? Change paragraph. Right. However, by the end of the Second World War, Winston Churchill gave narrow interpretation give narrow interpretation, give narrow interpretation to the Atlantic Charter, narrow interpretation to the Atlantic Charter, Atlantic Charter, and highlighted, highlighted that this charter applies only to this charter applied only to the Nazi territories acquired by Britain, not the whole colonial empire, only the Nazi territories acquired by Britain, that is territories under German, territories acquired by Britain, Clear. Change paragraph. Right. With establishment of the United Nations Organization, with establishment of the United Nations Organization, comma, United States exerted pressure towards decolonization, which ultimately led to the independence of India, in 1947. Independence of India in 1947. 1947. Clear? Right. In fact, Jawaharlal Nehru expressed his deep gratitude. Jawaharlal Nehru expressed his deep gratitude towards United States, in 1948. 1948. This was one aspect to be understood. So initially it was big role by United States, no doubt. Clear? Now change paragraph. Clear? Change paragraph. We'll come to Cold War. Before this, I'll take some of the questions. We'll keep on answering the questions also to clear all the issues. Next question is from Tista. Sir, India was not independent at that time. How India was able to sign the UN Charter? Was Britain okay with that? Again, I'll let you know. Clear? By the year 1944, it was almost clear that Britain was not in a capacity to retain colonies. Even though Winston Churchill gave a narrow interpretation that he wanted to liberate only Nazi-occupied territories. But by this time, due to aerial bombardment of Germany, British economy had been completely devastated. So Britain economically was not in a capacity to retain the colonies of Asia and Africa. So obviously decolonization became a reality which was to be started just after Second World War. Clear? That is why, since Britain was not in a capacity to retain colonies, in fact several colonial leaders, different leaders from colonies also were invited and participated in United Nations Charter or conference at San Francisco, and India became one of the original signatory of United Nations Charter. Britain could not oppose to that, because by this time Britain also realized that retaining colonies was not feasible because of complete attack on British economy by Germany. Clear, Tista? Please revert back. Now coming to another question by Subhashri. Sir, in my opinion, wherever US enters in the name of protecting democracy, they create a kind of crisis just like Viktor Frankenstein. Okay, fine. India must understand this in retrospective analysis and leave this US orbit to create its own curated foreign policy. Fine. I wanted to know about your perception about it, as I think my opinion is getting biased. Okay, fine, clear. See, such kind of analysis will come in international relations. In fact, there are many different perceptions in international relations, but again, I'll let you know, clear. You have to adopt the stand that suits national interest of India. So obviously, keeping in mind the national interest of India only, foreign policy needs to be curated or needs to be drafted, clear. Now, coming to your question, clear. There's no doubt, clear, that wherever US enters in the name of protecting democracy, they always create a complete devastation. Clear? There's many examples like that. Operation Thunderstorm in Iraq, then Libya, then other countries as well. Clear? In fact, I'll let you know, it's very important to understand for all of you. See, this topic is very analytical, so be very attentive in classes. Clear? Because whatever we are discussing, everything cannot be written, but whatever we are discussing also, they have a validity. Clear? So just remember, be attentive in the class. Clear? Again, I'll let you know one thing very important to understand. Clear? The important thing to understand is the most important problem with United States is that United States knows to dismantle the existing regime, or United States knows to dethrone the existing regime. But the most important issue is United States does not have any post-war reconstruction plan. I'll repeat, clear? It has been analyzed by experts all across the world that the biggest problem in US strategy is that US strategy is not guided by any post-war reconstruction plan. So dismantling the regime is not a very tough task. Clear? Removing the existing monarch is not a tough task. But the real progressive aspect is that after dethroning the existing regime, you need to have a reconstruction plan. But the big problem with United States is United States does not exhibit any post-war reconstruction plan towards any country that indicate that it is a half-big approach, and United States is concerned only with removing the regime that does not comply with US interests. Clear? That has happened with respect to Saddam Hussein in Iraq also. That happened to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya also, and other regions as well. Clear? So United States, the biggest problem is US does not have any post-war reconstruction plan, and therefore all the countries where US has intervened, all the countries has been devastated, and that has led to strong resentment against US approach and strategy. This is right. Till this point you are right, Subhashri. Now coming to the next part. Clear? India must understand this in retrospective analysis and leave the US orbit to create its own curated foreign policy. Now this needs explanation. Clear? Her opinion is that India must understand this strategy and limitation of US and leave US. Clear? Don't get bothered about US and create its own orbit, create its own curated foreign policy. Obviously, we have our own curated foreign policy. We have got an independent foreign policy. We got right to self-determination way back in 1947. So our foreign policy has been drafted without fear or favor. That is one thing very sure. Clear? So our foreign policy has been drafted without fear or favor, and it is a well-curated policy to serve the national interest of India, because as of now, India's foreign policy is more inclined towards realism rather than idealism of Nehru. Clear? So more it is guided towards realistic approach. But at the same time, clear, in all this perspective, it must be made clear, India cannot afford to leave the orbit of United States. Now, why India cannot afford to leave the orbit of United States? I just want to make it clear, Subhashri, and it's very important for all of you. Clear? One thing that needs to be understood, India is facing, rather, the whole Asian continent as of now is facing unipolarity, as contended by present journalist Raj Mohan Gandhi. You read articles of Raj Mohan Gandhi. 2 days back also there was article in Hindu. Clear? There's a very important issue to be understood, that whole Asian continent itself is witnessing unipolarity. Clear? So unipolarity is not only at the global level, unipolarity is being witnessed in Asian continent also, and the pole that is dominating Asian continent is none other than China. You must be knowing China has converted Asian continent almost into unipolar continent dominated by China, and China has started to adopt radical measures against India also and against other countries. Clear? Apart from this unipolarity of China and Asia, another things get further complicated because China has come closer to another arch rival of India, that is Pakistan. In fact, the whole India's foreign policy revolves around these two countries, that is China and Pakistan. In fact, our foreign policy is curated to deal with Pakistan and China. Clear? Now, at the same time, if these two countries are to be countered, and rather the two countries and the rise has to be checked to create a balance of power in Asia rather than to continue with unipolarity in Asia, India needs the support of some major superpower. Here comes into picture United States of America. Clear? Because India realizes very well the only country that is capable enough to counter the rise of China in Asian continent is the country of United States. Therefore, India cannot afford to bypass United States in any sense. Clear? India has to go with United States just to maintain balance of power in Asian continent. Then only India can ensure balance of power in South China Sea, and then only India can maintain balance of power in Asia Pacific region. That is why that Joe Biden has given a new approach known as the approach for Indo-Pacific region. Indo-Pacific region has become the center of attraction as of now, just to maintain balance of power with support of India, Australia and Japan. Clear? And that is where Quad has all come into picture. All this is basically to counter the rapid rise of China, which may result into complete hegemonization of China and Asian continent turning into a unipolar continent. Now, how come in this scenario India can afford to bypass United States? We also know United States not always a friend. United States cannot be a consistent partner because many times United States has deviated from India's interest. But at the same time, the realistic consideration says that United States is mandatory for India in order to deal with aggression of China supported by Pakistan that may affect India's interest in long-term basis. So these are the reasons that India cannot afford to have its own foreign policy leaving United States. Leaving United States is not an option altogether. Is that clear to all of you? It's very important. Understand from here the dynamics of global politics. Clear? India's foreign policy rotate around two countries. Do remember, these two countries are China and Pakistan. Clear? Is it clear? Is that clear, Subhashri? Now, coming to another question. Clear? I wanted to know your perception about it, as I think my opinion is getting biased. Your opinion is bit biased. Clear? In fact, I'll let you know. Clear? Your opinion seems to be more ideal in nature. But obviously, as we know, Indian foreign policy cannot be based only on idealism. It has to be based on certain amount of practicality. Clear? So, practicality is also very important. Clear? And practicality needs to be understood. Clear? So with this practicality only, we need to be more guided by national interest of India, and obviously countering Pakistan and China is the most important objective as of now for India, and that cannot be done without support of United States. That's the reality. Clear? So we cannot get into reality, and our foreign policy should not be guided by idealism, because we had paid a huge price for being idealism, because Sino-Indian War in 1962 was a big setback not only for India's territorial integrity, but that affected the prestige of India to a large extent. It was just because of idealism, because we gave asylum to Dalai Lama in 1959, which was totally opposed by China from the beginning. It's clear. It's clear. Clear? It's clear, Subhashri. Please revert back. Your question is very valid, very important. Clear? And it's important for all of you. Now, coming to clear. Sir, please tell one's dominion status concept, Anand. Clear? Again, I'll let you know. What do you mean by the concept of dominion status? Clear? The concept of dominion status was used in the course of Indian national movement. The concept of dominion status means that India would be given right to autonomy, that is, right to self-government, which was indicated by the term known as Swaraj. Clear? So, India would be given right of autonomy or self-government within the country. But at the same time, India's sovereignty will rest with British Crown in London. Sovereignty means India's foreign policy, India's defense, India's communication were to be decided by British Crown, and all other matters related to internal administration could be decided by Indian leaders. This is known as dominion status. Clear? Dominion status was a constitutional term. Clear? This term, the dominion status, was indicated by the word Swaraj. Dominion status was also indicated by the word home rule or autonomy. Clear? So dominion status meant right of autonomy or self-government, and at the same time surrender of sovereignty to British Crown. This is clear, the concept of dominion status. Fine. Okay. Next is from Vishwajit. Sir, in those meetings of United Nations, who represent India before independence? Indian leader or Viceroy of India? Indian leader. Clear? Most of the time it was Jawaharlal Nehru represented India in United Nations. Clear? So in 1948 also went to America, represented United Nations and expressed his gratitude. And in 1950 you all know that the permanent president, the first permanent president of United Nations as a women candidate was sister of Jawaharlal Nehru, Vijayalakshmi Pandit. Clear? What is Eisenhower Doctrine? Vidisha Sarkar. Clear? See, Eisenhower Doctrine was given in 1957 during the era of Cold War. And according to Eisenhower Doctrine, Eisenhower was basically the president of United States. Clear? So, Eisenhower Doctrine was given in 1957, whereby it was said a country could get American economic assistance or support, even military forces also, if it was threatened by armed aggression from another power. Clear? So, Eisenhower Doctrine given in 1957 made it clear that America can provide economic and military aid to those countries if they are threatened by other countries. Other countries basically implied the communist countries headed by Soviet Union. So it indicated the phenomenon of Cold War politics, whereby US President made it clear that United States is ready to provide military assistance, economic assistance and other assistance to any country being threatened by other attack of other countries. Other countries basically meant the communist countries tied up with Soviet Union. That was basically to win away more and more countries towards capitalist bloc and to tilt the balance of power in favor of the capitalist bloc in Cold War. This is Eisenhower Doctrine. Clear? Vidisha Sarkar. Coming to next question. Yes, sir, I have learned new words, post-war reconstruction strategy of US and many more. Clear? Fine. Clear? Thank you, sir. So, post-war reconstruction plan has never been there in the agenda of United States. Sir, what is important of Commonwealth? Importance of Commonwealth, Vishwajit. Clear? See, I'll let you know. Importance of Commonwealth. These are parts of modern history. Clear? Modern Commonwealth means when all the colonies of Britain began to be liberated, an offer was given to all these liberated colonies that if they want to join, they can join an organization at global level headed by British monarch in order to promote their economic development and support. Clear? And this organization promoted at global level was known as Commonwealth of Nations Group. So Commonwealth of Nations Group comprises of all the previous colonies of Britain in Asia and Africa who have joined this organization in order to get bilateral support from British monarch or British government. So British monarch or monarch is the head of Commonwealth of Nations, and it comprises of all the previous colonies of Britain in Asia and Africa. It's clear. So please tell us what is the visa related issue between US and India. We'll come to visa regime, H1B visa and F1 visa. We'll come to visa regime is a very important topic between India and United States. We'll come to visa regime issue between India and US. Clear? Clear, sir. Thank you, Anand. Fine, clear? So, 4 million Indians are there in US. Indian diaspora plays a very important role in US, and therefore we'll discuss about visa regime also between US and India. Large number of Indian diaspora who are there in United States, they play a very important role, and obviously India cares for those diaspora, and therefore there's a regime that exists in India and United States known as visa regime. We'll come to that. It's clear. All the questions are clear. In international relations, questions are important. Clear? So, we were discussing about the retrospect of Indo-US relationship, and we had discussed till 1948 when Jawaharlal Nehru expresses deep gratitude towards US for support towards India's liberation. Clear? Meanwhile, just understand, after the end of Second World War only, the era of Cold War started. In the era of Cold War, United States became the leader of the capitalist bloc. Clear? And at this time in the era of Cold War, Jawaharlal Nehru advocated the principle of non-alignment. That is, maintaining principal distance from the power bloc so that whatever meager resources were there in India could be utilized for socio-economic development rather than to divert towards acquisition of arms and weapons. Clear? With such perspective, we advocated non-alignment. United States did not have problem with non-alignment, but the basic issue was Nehru, even though formally advocated non-alignment, effectively he was tilted towards socialist ideology. In fact, he was a declared socialist leader, and therefore it was realized he was more inclined towards Soviet Union. And just because of this, it led to perceived ideological differences between India and United States. This perceived ideological differences continued throughout the era of Cold War, and that affected India's interest to a large extent. Clear? So we'll discuss about this perceived ideological differences between the two countries in the era of Cold War. And that is why United States began to support Pakistan just to counter India in South Asian politics. Clear? Write this paragraph. Clear? Right, next in paragraph, right, after the end of the Second World War, after the end of the Second World War, the phenomena of Cold War, the phenomena of Cold War, the phenomena of Cold War began. Cold War began between the capitalist bloc and the communist bloc, BLOC, between the capitalist bloc and the communist bloc, Clear? Right, the capitalist bloc headed by United States, wanted more and more countries, to join the capitalist bloc, and with such objective, announced Marshall Plan, and Eisenhower Doctrine. Asked just now. Clear? Eisenhower Doctrine asked by? Who asked the Eisenhower Doctrine? Vidisha Sarkar. Clear? Okay, Marshall Plan and Eisenhower Doctrine, whereby United States agreed to provide. Financial, economic, decided to provide financial, economic, and even military support, to those countries being attacked by other powers. That is basically the communist powers, attacked by other powers. Clear? Powers. Change paragraph. Right. In the context of the Cold War politics, the Cold War politics, Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru advocated the principle of non-alignment. non-alignment. Principle of non-alignment. Advocated the principle of non-alignment. Non-alignment. Clear? Principle of non-alignment. Principle of non-alignment. Non-alignment. To maintain principled distance. To maintain principled distance from the two power blocks. Principled distance from the two power blocks. Principal distance from the two power blocks. From the two power blocks. Right? At the same time, Nehru was a declared socialist. Nehru was a declared socialist and inclined towards Soviet Union. Socialism emerged from Soviet Union. Inclined towards Soviet Union. Okay. Right. This resulted into perceived ideological differences. It may not be right, clear, but it was perceived from both sides. This led to perceived ideological differences. Between India and United States, which persisted throughout the era of Cold War. Throughout the era of Cold War. Clear? Right? In order to counter India in South Asian politics, United States began to support Pakistan. And even provided membership to Pakistan. In regional organizations. Like Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. Like the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. And the Central Treaty Organization. Central Treaty Organization. It was also known as Baghdad Pact. Central Treaty Organization. So one was related to Southeast Asia, another was known as Central Region, that is West Asian region. Southeast Asian Treaty Organization and Central Treaty Organization. Clear? Clear? Right. Moreover, United States supported Pakistan. Very serious. Supported Pakistan on Kashmir issue. United States supported Pakistan on Kashmir issue, on Kashmir issue, and demanded, and demanded, and demanded the ceasefire line in Kashmir, and demanded the ceasefire line in Kashmir, Kashmir, whereby Western Kashmir came under Pakistan's control. Western Kashmir came under Pakistan's control, known as Pakistan's control, known as POK. Pakistan occupied Kashmir, known as POK. Known as POK. Okay, right. Moreover, United States demanded. Moreover, United States demanded that India should conduct a public referendum in Kashmir. These are very important issues. India should conduct a public referendum in Kashmir. Kashmir to integrate it into Indian Union. Integrate it into Indian Union. Clear? Right. Such a stand of United States. Adversely affected Indian sentiment. Adversely affected Indian sentiment. Adversely affected Indian sentiment. And led to a wide gulf. WIDEGULF, led to a wide gulf between India and United States. By wide gulf between India and United States. India and United States. Clear? Wide gulf between India and United States. Clear? And United States. This is very important to understand. Clear? Okay. So that is why differences began to take place between India and US. You need to understand Kashmir issue and support given by US to Pakistan in CA2 and CENTO. Clear? This was one development. Clear? Meanwhile, just understand. Clear? Apart from this development that began to take place, India began to get away from United States just because Pakistan support to just because of US support to Pakistan. Clear? Things began to get further disturbed. Clear? Why it got further disturbed? The reason is that in 1971, Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi concluded Indo-Soviet Treaty for Peace, Friendship and Cooperation. Clear? It was a comprehensive treaty that marked the formal beginning of bilateral relationship between India and Soviet Union. This was perceived by United States that India is clearly inclined towards Soviet Union. Clear? Meanwhile, Indira Gandhi instigated a war with Pakistan in 1971, and in the Indo-Pak War of 1971, Indira Gandhi defeated Pakistani forces, liberated East Pakistan as a new country, Bangladesh. Pakistan asked for US support, and Pakistan deputed its largest aircraft carrier in the Bay of Bengal region known as Enterprise. And even United States announced that it may attack India through nuclear weapons. Clear? It created huge crisis in India, and Indian sentiments got adversely affected. Clear? At the same time, under Soviet pressure, United States recalled back its aircraft carrier Enterprise from Bay of Bengal region, but it affected the sentiments of India beyond imagination. Clear? This led to further widening of gulf between India and United States. Clear? This was in 1971. Right, next paragraph. Right, the relationship between India and United States the relationship between India and United States, India and United States, relationship between India and United States got further affected, got further affected got further affected got affected during the prime ministership clear clear got affected during the prime ministership of Indira Gandhi. Prime ministership of Indira Gandhi, who promoted formal who promoted formal who promoted formal bilateral relationship with the Soviet Union to relationship with the Soviet Union. Clear? Right. Moreover, Indira Gandhi started war with Pakistan. In 1971, whereby East Pakistan was liberated as Bangladesh. Okay? Right. United States opposed India's stand. And deputed its aircraft carrier, Enterprise in the Bay of Bengal region, and even announced to take nuclear aggression. Clear? Right. This marked the lowest point. This marked the lowest ebb, EBB. This marked the lowest ebb in Indo-US relationship. Lowest ebb in Indo-US relationship. In fact, vulgar remarks began to be given. Don't write, but just understand. Vulgar remarks began to be given for Indira Gandhi by US President Richard Nixon. Clear? Out of frustration, Richard Nixon began to use vulgar words for Indira Gandhi. Huge differences began to take place between Indira Gandhi and US President Richard Nixon. Clear? In fact, Richard Nixon began to use some unparliamentary languages for Indians and Indira Gandhi. But Indira Gandhi acted purely on national interest and she liberated Bangladesh in 1971. Clear? Because why it became important? Because both Pakistan and China made a grand plan to separate the entire northeastern part of India from India through a region known as Siliguri Corridor, which is located in West Bengal region. Clear? So at this time, why it became very important? Because Pakistan and China together decided to block the Chicken Snake Corridor in Siliguri region, clear, in Bengal, and to separate the entire northeastern region from Indian territory. Therefore, it became very important to separate East Pakistan from Pakistan's clutches. And Indira Gandhi went for Indo-Pak War in 1971. So, all these issues became very complicated at the time, and Indira Gandhi had to act in the interest of India. Clear? And therefore, it led to serious differences between India and United States. In fact, the lowest point was reached in Indo-US relationship in 1971. Clear? This was one development. Clear? Meanwhile, at the same time, clear, Indo-US relationship continued to be affected in the later course as well, but in 1991, clear, 1991, Cold War came to an end, and at the same time, Soviet Union got declined and disintegrated. Thereafter, after the end of Cold War, the world got converted from bipolar order to unipolar order dominated by United States, clear, in 1991. Meanwhile, in the same year in 1991, India also made radical reforms within the country, and these radical reforms were introduced in 1991 in form of liberalization, privatization and globalization, whereby India decided to get integrated with global economy and wanted to open its economy for private players and investors that suited the capitalist model of United States. So from 1991, healthy relationship began to develop between India and United States, largely because of the end of ideological differences with the end of Cold War. Clear? So relationship began to pick up, relationship began to witness upward trajectory after 1991, just because of two things: end of Cold War on the one hand, and comprehensive reforms introduced by India under liberalization, privatization and globalization. Things began to take a positive turn from 1991. However, the relationship between India and the United States began to pick up rapidly in the beginning of 21st century, exactly from 2001. Why? What was the reason? In 2001, terrorist attack took place on United States in September. Clear? And when the terrorist attack took place in September, that is on 11th of September 2001, clear, United States became a victim of global terrorism, and therefore United States began to come closer to India. Why? Because India has been proclaiming to the global community since 1947 that India is a victim of cross-border terrorism, and the greatest threat to peace and security to the world community is from terrorism. But United States never took this argument seriously. Even United States went forward to say there's nothing called terrorism in global politics. Terrorism is a phenomenon confined only to Asian continent. Clear? But US itself, when it became victim of terrorism, United States realized that the greatest threat to global peace and security is from terrorism claimed by India much earlier. And moreover, it was realized that the epicenter of this global terrorism is confined to Afghanistan and Pakistan. Therefore, United States began to move away from Pakistan and began to come closer to India in order to deal with the epicenter of terrorism confined to Afghanistan and Pakistan, known as AfPak region. So this changed the whole dynamics of international relations as United States walked away from Pakistan and began to come closer to India in order to lead a collective fight against global terrorism with epicenter in Pakistan and Afghanistan. In fact, the greatest beneficiary of this terrorist attack in global politics was none other than India, as India began to be recognized as a responsible country that had been fighting against terrorism since 1947. Clear? Things began to change from 2001, and therefore India and United States began to witness proper upward trajectory in bilateral relationship. Clear? Now from here we'll start with the contemporary issues between India and United States from 2001, from the beginning of 21st century. Clear? Right, next. Clear? Right, Indo-US relationship. Indo-US relationship began to change. Indo-US relationship began to change after 1991, due to two major factors. Right, point wise. Due to two major factors. Right, point wise. Number one, Major factors. Number one, clear? Number one, clear? Right. 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 The phenomena of Cold War came to an end. The phenomena of Cold War came to an end. With disintegration of the Soviet Union. With disintegration of the Soviet Union. Disintegration of the Soviet Union. Soviet Union that ended perceived ideological differences, that ended perceived ideological differences, perceived ideological differences, ideological differences. Second point, clear? Right, India adopted comprehensive economic reforms, adopted comprehensive economic reforms of liberalization, privatization and globalization. Liberalization, privatization and globalization on capitalist lines. On capitalist lines. Suited to United States. Suited to United States. Two factors simultaneously. United States. Clear? Right. Next paragraph. Right. These factors resulted into these factors resulted into the upward trajectory, resulted into the upward trajectory, resulted into upward trajectory of Indo-US relationship, upward trajectory of Indo-US relationship, Indo-US relationship, trajectory of Indo-US relationship. Change paragraph. Right. However, the thrust to Indo-US relationship, however, the thrust, T-H-R-U-S-T, however, the thrust to Indo-US relationship, the thrust to Indo-US relationship was given after terrorist attack on United States, in 2001. In 2001. On United States in 2001. In 2001. In 2001. Clear? In 2001. Clear? Right. In this attack, the World Trade Center, in this attack, the World Trade Center, and the defense headquarters, Pentagon House of United States. In this attack, the World Trade Center and the Pentagon House of United States were thoroughly destroyed. That's right. Clear? Right. The responsibility of this attack was taken by the terrorist organization. The responsibility of this attack was taken by the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. Terrorist organization Al-Qaeda operating from Afghanistan. Operating from Afghanistan. 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 Clear? Right, next paragraph. Right, this attack, change paragraph, right? This attack changed the complete perception of United States. Changed the complete perception of United States towards India. Complete perception of United States towards India, and it decided to fight. It decided to fight against global terrorism, with India. Against global terrorism with India. Global terrorism with India. Clear? Right, this result, with India. Right, moreover, United States identified the regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan, FPAC region, identified the regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan, FPAC regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan, FPAC region, as epicenter of global terrorism. As epicenter of global terrorism. Epicenter of global terrorism, and began to move away from Pakistan. Began to move away from Pakistan. Began to move away from Pakistan. Move away from Pakistan. So this marked the beginning of Indo-US relationship on a positive note. Clear? This was the development that took place. Clear? So this is the retrospect of Indo-US relationship. Both proved to be strange democracies still in the era of Cold War, and they started to get engaged democracies from the beginning of 21st century, especially after the terrorist strike against United States of America. It's clear, the retrospective part is clear, that is relationship in historical sense between India and United States. We need to understand, clear? Now, we'll discuss about the contemporary issues between India and United States since 2001, when relationship began to take an upward trajectory in real sense and continues till contemporary times, clear? So now we'll move to the contemporary issues, and in contemporary issues, first of all, we'll discuss the defense negotiation and cooperation between India and United States, as it is one of the major component of bilateral issue between the two countries, that is defense relationship. First of all, let us take some questions. Clear? Now, questions asked. Clear? Visa related, this done, we'll be doing that. So now question is from Nayan. Sir, how much India-US relationship has deteriorated since India purchasing oil from Russia and taking neutral stand on Russia-Ukraine war? Clear? And sir, you said that US is very important if we have to check the rise of China. See, again, I'll let you know. Clear? First of all, that Russia factor is an important factor in US relationship, Indo-US relationship, because still India considered Russia to be an all-weather friend. Clear? So even though Indo-US relationship has begun to witness a trajectory, but we are not ready to bypass Russia. With Russia, we still have healthy relationship, and we want to continue with healthy relationship. Clear? More so, India adopted almost a neutral stand in Russia-Ukraine war, which has also affected the sentiments of United States. Clear? So obviously, there is always a kind of thorn in relationship between India and United States because of Russia factor. Clear? But their differences has taken place between India and United States because of Russia. Time and on will come to importance of Russian angle in Indo-US relationship, and moreover in recent times because of India's neutral stand on Russia-Ukraine crisis, it has also affected US sentiments to a large extent, and therefore it has led to some serious controversy between the two countries. But at the same time, India cannot compromise with its principles of foreign policy, and India has made it clear that any sanction must not be imposed upon Russia or unilaterally. It must be based on consensus. So obviously India cannot afford to compromise with its principles of foreign policy by supporting United States in every venture. But at the same time, we have remained to be neutral in Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has affected the sentiments of United States. Clear? And sir, you said that US is very important if we have to check the rise of China. Obviously, clear, in order to prevent Asian continent from turning into unipolar continent, we have to counter China with support of United States. That's a mandatory. In fact, you can say it as an evil necessity. Clear? We cannot get rid of that. Next question. Sir, are we not allowed to write biased conclusion in answers? If not, how should we conclude? See, I'll let you know. Clear? Biasness should not be to the extent that it goes against the national interest of India. Always keep in mind in UPSC examination, you have to keep national interest at the center. Clear? So, keeping national interest at the center, if you conclude anything, it is justified. Clear? At the same time, if we are supporting something, suppose India being neutral in Russia-Ukraine conflict. Why we are neutral? Because that suits the national interest of India. Clear? So obviously your conclusion should always be guided by importance to national interest of India. So national interest of India is to be supreme, and national interest must be protected in all circumstances. So you need not be biased in any sense. Always make it clear your answer should be to guided by national interest. If it is somehow the otherwise, because obviously biasness is inevitable, it will come, but it should not go to the extreme direction that may affect the stand of India as a nation. So always keep this in mind, that national interest should be out to be paramount, and when you write conclusion, your answer should be balanced. It should not be biased towards one extreme side. Clear? It's clear. Next question, Nanda. Next is from Madan. So what is the principal distance from the two power blocks? Principal distance means distance based on morality, based on national interest. Clear? India will always try to maintain a principal distance whereby India will not come closer to any one bloc that may tilt the balance of power, affect the balance of power. So India will maintain a principal distance from the two power blocks, that is distance which is required to maintain peace and security without compromising with national interest of India. So principal distance means that distance decided by India which may not affect the balance of power at global level without compromising with national interest of India. This is known as principal distance from the power blocks. Madan, clear? Now Vidisha Sarkar, sir, when US did so much bad to us, they never stood in our support. Why we are trying to establish good relations with US? Is it just because they are rich and powerful? No, it's not only because of rich and powerful. They are rich and powerful, there is no doubt. But at the same time, India has to look first of all, international relations. Again, I'll let you know, international relations has to be judged in concentric circles. Clear? So you need to understand in concentric circles. Suppose for instance, here we have this country that is India. So India is here. Clear? So first of all, India will look into safety and security in adjoining areas. Clear? Adjoining areas mean neighboring countries, obviously. So India first of need to deal with the neighboring countries. Clear? In order to deal with neighboring country, if India has to take support of faraway country, India can take the support of faraway country. But first of all, pressing concern is to deal with neighboring countries. And in this neighboring circle, China is also one of it. Clear? And as we all know, there has not been healthy relationship between India and China. So the immediate problem for India is China. Immediate problem for India is not United States, is located far away in American continent. So since the immediate problem right now is China and Pakistan, and both the countries can be countered with the support of some bigger power in global politics, which can be a bigger power than China. Beyond China, there's only one power that can counter China, that is United States. So obviously, if China and Pakistan has to be countered to maintain balance of power in India's neighborhood, it has to be United States, and therefore India has to take the support of United States, being much more rich and powerful than even China. This is the pressing concern for India, to have healthy relationship with with the United States. And more so, clear, you need to understand, India cannot rely on Russia with respect to China. This dynamics also needs to be understood, because Russia and China are very close to each other, as both are supporter of socialism and communism. Since both are supporter of socialism and communism, most of the time Russia and China comes together. Clear? Since both Russia and China comes together, obviously India cannot rely on Russia with respect to China. So China can be countered only with the support of United States. Therefore, United States becomes an evil necessity just because of China factor. Is this clear? Vidisha. Clear? Coming to Bishwajit. Why, sir, why US support Pakistan, even communist bloc China also support? Clear? That could not be understood as not US not support India for supporting socialist ideology, but support Pakistan, even they support China. Clear? Again, I'll let you know. Clear? Not in the era of Cold War. Pakistan was not closer to China in the era of Cold War. Clear? Pakistan was just an Islamic country and therefore not tied up with China. Pakistan therefore was supported by United States primarily to counter India. But after 1991, Pakistan and China came closer to each other. Since Pakistan and China has come closer to each other, and that led to terrorist attack also in 2001, thereafter US moved away from Pakistan and therefore began to oppose both Pakistan and China. And United States came closer to India. So US approach in Asia is largely based on changing circumstances, and therefore the circumstances has changed since 2001, and thereafter United States began to come closer to India to counter now Pakistan and China. It's clear. So in the era of Cold War, United States was countering India with Pakistan. Now United States countering Pakistan with India. That is the change in dynamics. Clear? No question. Vishwajit, clear? No, sir. Anirvan, clear? Why in international relations we call the countries with the name of their capital, like New Delhi held talks with Beijing? The reason is obviously because the major diplomatic establishment is always placed in the capital cities. Normally we use the term name of capital cities, that is New Delhi and Beijing or Moscow or Washington. Clear? The reason being that diplomatic establishments or embassy establishments is always placed in the capital city. So obviously we call that countries with the capital cities also. In newspapers only you find like New Delhi and Beijing only. Clear? Coming to next one. Sir, please, is it like that unipolarity always refers to USA in the period after Cold War, and bipolarity always dominate the two superpowers in the world, US and Russia or USSR? And what multipolarity refers to? Anand, clear? It's true that largely unipolarity in global politics after Cold War refers to United States hegemony. Bipolarity refers to dominance of United States and USSR. And no, the countries, especially India and other countries, are supporting the idea of multipolarity, because check and counter check could be maintained. Multipolarity means having multipolar world order, so that it could result in democratization of global politics rather than domination by one country. Clear? So multipolarity is being advocated as of now in contemporary times in order to maintain multiple poles at the world, to maintain check and counter check. Multipolarity refers to multipoles, like one pole in Asia, one pole in Africa, one pole in North America, and every pole countering each other to maintain balance of power. Clear? Tista, sir, for a long time the USA supported China. Then from when the dynamics are changed? Clear? And why did the USA support Republic of China in getting a seat in Security Council? Clear? For a long time USA supported. For instance, in the world history also we discussed, United States did not support People's Republic of China just because of communist revolution. Rather, United States began to support an adjoining island known as Formosa or Taiwan, which was recognized as Republic of China. Clear? Later and initially, Republic of China was given a permanent membership of Security Council, not People's Republic of China. But just after some time, People's Republic of China adopted One China policy. And under One China policy, Taiwan was declared to be a part of China. Since Taiwan was declared to be a part of China, clear, at the same time, it was made clear that Taiwan and China will come together, and Taiwan is a part part of China. So Taiwan was replaced by China as permanent member, and since then United States and China began to support each other. Clear? But support each other only on bilateral front. It's clear. So it changed because of 1972 under One China policy, when China was given a permanent membership in place of Taiwan in Security Council. Clear, Tista? Coming to another, US used to say that US would impose CAATSA sanction on the country, which would buy S-500 from India, and despite that India has bought 500 from Russia, but US did not impose CAATSA. We'll come to this, is a very important thing, sanction to India. So can we say that India is an exception to CAATSA? Yeah, waiver has been given to India from CAATSA. Clear? So waiver has been given by United States to India in CAATSA, and India has purchased S-400 Triumph from Russia. Clear? So we'll come to the purchase of S-400 Triumph from Russia as a waiver to India given by United States. We'll come to CAATSA also. Don't worry, it's an important thing, Nimai. Clear? Now, coming to next question. Sir, you always use the term dynamics. What does you mean? Dynamic means changing circumstances. Clear? Because dynamism means something which is not very consistent, which keeps on changing from time to time. That is no dynamics. International relations is always dynamic in nature because it keeps on changing from time to time. Is it picture or situation or pattern? It's pattern basically. Clear? Situation or pattern. That is situation that keeps on changing from time to time under with certain pattern. It's known as dynamics. Clear? All the questions? Okay, now first of all, now we'll start with contemporary developments in Indo-US relationship, and in this first of all we'll start with the defense cooperation between the two countries. Clear? So let us start with the defense cooperation between India and United States. Defense cooperation between India and United States. Clear? The most important component as of now in contemporary times between the two countries. Clear? Now, first of all, I'll let you know when this defense cooperation began to take place between India and United States. Clear? It started to take place as soon as the relationship began to feel upward trajectory. Clear? In fact, we had discussed that Indo-US relationship began to witness positive growth from 1991. It was because of two factors. The two factors was the end of Cold War politics that ended perceived ideological differences, and also because India adopted liberalization, privatization and globalization. And in the same year, in 1991 only, there was commander of US Army. Clear? And this commander of US Army was Claude Kiglighter, and Claude Kiglighter proposed the idea of providing training to Indian armed forces and also promoting healthy defense cooperation between the two countries. So with this proposal, also known as Kiglighter proposal in 1991, defense cooperation between the two countries started in a rudimentary fashion, but it was given a real shape, it was given a real thrust in 1995, when at the same time formal defense relationship was proposed between India and United States. And when in 1995 formal defense relationship was proposed between India and United States, from here only it was decided to perform joint exercises among the armed forces, naval forces and air forces of the two countries. Also decided to have bilateral defense visits between the two countries, bilateral defense purchases between the two countries, and defense exercises between the two countries. Clear? So it marked the real beginning of defense cooperation from 1995, when defense relations was accepted as a formal component of Indo-US bilateral relationship. Clear? For right about this beginning. Clear? Right. Indo-US bilateral relationship under defense cooperation. Indo-US bilateral relationship is largely based on defense cooperation, and India's defense negotiation with the United States. Defense negotiation with the United States. Clear? United States. Right. The bilateral relationship between India and United States, the bilateral relationship between India and United States, the bilateral relationship between India and United States started to pick up from 1991, that also led to the beginning of defense cooperation. Clear? Defense cooperation. Right. In 1991, the commander of the US Army, in 1991, the commander of the US Army, Claude Kicklighter, gave some proposals, gave some proposals whereby he whereby gave some proposals whereby emphasis was on bilateral visits, military training, and conferences between United States and India. Clear? Right. 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 The most important dimension of these proposals, also known as Kicklighter proposals, the most important dimension of these proposals was to invite India in the regional organizations and conferences sponsored by US. Clear? Sponsored by US. Clear? US. Right. The Kicklighter proposals, as they are known, the Kicklighter proposals resulted into formal defense relations. In 1995. Formal defense relations in 1995. Clear? Right. Both India and United States collectively decided to conduct joint exercises. Second, bilateral defense visits. Clear? defense visits, then bilateral defense visits, and and cooperation and cooperation cooperation in defense production and research. Cooperation in defense production and research. Defense production and research. And defense production and research. Clear? Research. Clear? Right, next paragraph. With beginning of this defense relations, with beginning of this defense relations, with beginning of this defense relations, this defense relation, beginning of this defense relation, clear? Different relation, joint defense exercises, joint defense exercises, joint defense exercises began to be conducted. Joint defense exercises began to be conducted regularly. Began to be conducted regularly. Right, very important, clear? Right, the joint armed exercise, the joint armed exercise, the joint armed exercise between India and United States, the joint armed exercise between India and United States, between India and United States is codenamed as Yuddha Abhyas, is codenamed as Yuddha Abhyas and Vajra Prahar, codenamed as Yuddha Abhyas and Vajra Prahar. Yuddha Abhyas, these are all Indian terms. Yuddha Abhyas and Vajra Prahar. Vajra Prahar. Yuddha Abhyas and Vajra Prahar. Clear? Right, next, the joint naval exercise. The joint naval exercise. The joint naval exercise between India and United States. The joint naval exercise between India and United States is codenamed as Malabar exercise. Codenamed as Malabar exercise. Malabar exercise, which has become a multilateral exercise. It's not only bilateral, which has become a multilateral exercise, involving Japan and Australia. Japan since 2015. Japan and Australia, that is Pacific region. Japan and Australia. Malabar exercise. Japan and Australia. Change paragraph. Clear? Right. The joint. Right. Next. The joint Air Force exercise. The joint Air Force exercise between India and United States. Between India and United States is codenamed as COPE India exercise. Is codenamed as COPE India exercise. COPE India exercise. COPE India exercise. India exercise. Now write the logic. Clear? Right. Next paragraph. Right. The logic behind the logic behind these exercises, the logic behind these exercises, the logic behind these exercises is to promote hybrid learning and training, is to promote hybrid training and learning among the forces of the two countries, among the forces of the two countries, forces of the two countries, clear? Right. Moreover, these exercises has enabled United States, these exercises enable United States to promote the sale of defense equipments, to promote the sale of defense equipments, to India. Marketing strategy, defense equipments to India. Defense equipments to India. Clear? Change paragraph. Clear? Right. In the beginning of, clear? In the beginning of 21st century, this defense relation was reviewed. After 10 years. That is, it was signed in 1995. After 10 years, which led to the Indo-US Defense Agreement, in 2005. Indo-US Defense Agreement in 2005. So, Indo-US Defense Agreement in 2005. Clear? Right. This agreement was concluded. For 1 decade, for another 10 years. This agreement was concluded for 1 decade, with emphasis on interoperability. To learn from each other. With emphasis on interoperability. Okay? Right. Therefore, this agreement decided to promote, very important, this agreement decided to promote exchange of bilateral experiences. This agreement decided to promote exchange of bilateral experiences, and to focus on technology transfers. Very important. It's a core demand of India, and to focus on technology transfer. Clear? Right. Beside, focus was given on co-production of defense equipments, not only buying and selling. Focus was given on co-production of defense equipments, defense equipments, co-production of defense equipments, clear? Right here only, this defense agreement also proposed the joint vision, for the Indian Ocean, to protect Indian Ocean, joint vision for the Indian Ocean, joint vision for the Indian Ocean. So, defense agreement again to be reviewed after 10 years, and it was reviewed in 2015. We'll come to that, clear? So, all these developments. So, it started in 1991 like kick light proposals, then defense cooperation relations in 1995. After this, defense agreement in 2005, and it was reviewed again in 2015, clear? We'll come to all this defense cooperation between India and United States. It's clear? Now, we'll take a break of 1 hour, and after this break, we'll again continue with defense cooperation and other contemporary dimensions of Indo-US relationship. Thank you.